Before we can get to texturing this model, we of course need to unwrap it. And we are going to start by marking the seams for the legs. So we can select them, numpad / to isolate them in local view, tab to go into edit mode, Alt-A to deselect everything, and now we want to select the edge loops at the top, so Alt-Shift-left click on those edges we made with the bevel. We also want to go down here and select the bottom edge loop. U, mark seam. And now we have those red edges. Wonderful. We can go to this area, so kind of in the back of the model. Doesn't matter all that much. We can select that edge and zoom in just to make it a little bit easier to select. So we want those 3 edges. Then we can press Shift click to select that small edge below them and go all the way to the base, to the bottom of the leg. Control left click to select that whole section. U, mark seam. And that is the leg unwrapped. We can press Alt-A to deselect everything, tab to go into object mode. With the mouse over the mirror modifier, we can apply it at this point, so press Ctrl-A. If we go back into edit mode, we can see that all the legs now have their seams marked. Numpad / to exit the local view. The tabletop is just a flat plane, so we don't really need to mess with it at all, but we do want to mark the seams on the tabletop. So again, isolate that piece, tab to go into edit mode, Alt-A to deselect everything, and we're going to start by selecting the edge loops on the outside, all those edges that we made. So select the one at the bottom, the one at the top as well. U, mark seams. We also want to select those 4 corners and mark the seams there as well. So we are going to start over here with this small edge. Left click on that. Go to the other side of the table. Control left click to make sure we have the entire section selected. And we'll do the same on the other side. Shift left click to select the small edge. And on the inside, we can press Ctrl left click to select the entire section. U, mark seam. There we go. We'll do the same on the opposite ends over here as well. Select the small edge. Flip the camera around. Select the edge on the other end. Ctrl left click. U, mark seam. We'll do the same over here one last time. We can zoom in on it to make the selection a little bit easier. Select the small edge, and then on the other side, Ctrl left click, U, mark seam. And that is the tabletop with all the seams marked. Tab to go into object mode, exit local view, and now we need to do it for the armrest. And to make it a little bit easier, again we are going to disable the array modifier. Isolate it with numpad /, tab to go into edit mode, Alt-A to deselect everything, and the first thing we want to select is the edge loop at the bottom. Alt-Shift-left click on all 4 sides. We also want to select the edge loops in the cup holder area, and also those 3 edges on the side. We can do the same on the other side here, just to cut it into smaller sections. U, mark seams, Alt-A to deselect, tab to go into edit mode, and in order to apply the modifier, we can just hover over it with the mouse, press Ctrl A, and there we go. Again, if we go back into edit mode, we can see that everything has the seams marked. Exit local view, and the last part we need to unwrap is the cup holder. So again, the same with the armrest, hide the array modifier, isolate the object, tab to go into edit mode, Alt A to deselect everything, and we are going to select all the edge loops. We want to make sure that all those sharp corners are marked. And we can also select this edge loop just to cut it a little bit better. U, mark seam, Alt A to deselect everything, tab to go back into object mode, numpad / to exit the local view. With the mouse over the modifier, Ctrl A to apply it. At this point we can just drag and select everything, Ctrl J to join it, rename that table or poker table if you want to be more specific. We can do the same on the object data properties. And we can also get rid of the array control. X to delete it. It really doesn't do anything at this point. If we select the table, we can see that all the transforms have been reset. And now we can get to the unwrapping. The last thing we want to do here is go into the UV editing tab, press A to select all the parts of the model, period on the numpad to zoom in on it a little bit, press U and unwrap. We can open this unwrap option box and set the margin to 0.002, just so that the different parts of the UV will have a little bit more room between them. We can go back into the Layout tab, Shift D to duplicate it, hide the original. This one will press Ctrl 1 to activate the subdivision modifier on level 1, Ctrl A to apply it, and at this point we can export it. So if we go into File, Export, OBJ, and just put it in the correct folder. Make sure we have the selection limited to selection only, so we don't also take the original table with us. And the next part will be in Substance Painter. Now that we are in Substance, we want to go to File, New, and select our folder. In that folder, we can just grab the OBJ file we made, set the document resolution to 2K or leave it at 1K, doesn't matter all that much. Normal map, change it from DirectX to OpenGL, and press OK. We can press F in the 2D view to focus on the UVs, and we can also press F in the 3D view just to make sure we are not missing any parts of the model. From here we are going to the texture set settings, scroll all the way down into Bake Mesh Maps. Set the output size to 2K, and we can uncheck the ID map. We don't have anything, so it's not going to bake it anyway. Now all we have to do is press Bake Selected Textures. And now that the textures are baked, we can go back into the Layers tab, delete this pre-made layer, and now we can start working. The first material we are going to make is the wood material for the legs and the tabletop. So in the Layers tab, we can create a new fill layer, double-click to rename that Base. Now the color, we want it to have a brown orangey color. And in the roughness, we want to change it to 0.4, so it's not as glossy. we can press Ctrl D to duplicate that layer, and again double click to rename that. This one will be color 1, as that would be the color variation. And if we go into the channels here, we can press Alt and left click on the color channel, and now it's the only one that is activated. We do want the color to be darker, so if we click on it, we can drag the value all the way down to have a very dark tone to it. Then we want to press right click, add a black mask, right click again, add a fill layer. And if we go into the textures, generally any of the directional noise textures will do a nice job. In this case, I will go with directional noise 1 and change the projection to triplanar. Now it does something, but it is a little bit weak, so we can change the scale to 4, 3 maybe, and that gives us a nice variation in there. Now we can create a new folder or a new group, rename that wood, select both of the layers, drag them into the folder, and we can click on the folder icon to close it, right click on the folder itself, again add a black mask, and if we go into the polygon fill options, we want the mesh fill, click and drag to select all 4 legs, and click again to select the table top. And that is the wood material. The next material we are going to have is for the cup holders, and if we go into the smart materials, we can just grab the copper and drag it to the top. Right click, add a black mask, and again in the polygon fill, mesh fill, and we are going to select all those cup holders that we made. There we go. After that, we want to create the material for the center part. So again, we are going to start with a fill layer. Call that base. The color would be red. Very strong saturated red. And the roughness should be higher, so maybe 0.6. Ctrl D to duplicate that layer. Alt left click on the color channel to make sure that's the only one active. Select the color and drag the value down. Rename that color 1. Right click, add a black mask. Right click again, this time add a generator. And in the generator tab, we are going to pick the UV border. We want to play with it a little bit, so we want the smoothness at 0.1 and the distance at 0.15. So it's a little bit darker. Now we want to create a new folder. Call that center. And drag those 2 layers into that folder. Close that folder, and again right click, add a black mask, and pick the center. The last material we are going to make is for the armrest, and again we are going to start with a fill layer. Name that base. The color should be darker brown. Almost black, so something like that. The roughness, we can set it to 0.6 or maybe 0.55. Then we are going to duplicate it, so Ctrl D, and name that MAT var 1. So material variation 1. We are going to uncheck the height, metalness, and normal, and we are going to stick with just the roughness and the color. So the roughness, we will set it to 0.45, and the color will be lighter. So we have a nice variation here. Right click, add a black mask. Right click, add a fill layer. And this time we are going to use the crystals. We can set the scale to maybe 2. And we can also set the projection to triplanar. So now we can set the scale to maybe 5. And tune down the opacity to maybe 75 or even 50. So we still have some variation, but it's not so strong. We also want to create a new fill layer, and this one we will call height 1. This will only control the height map, so Alt and left click on the height channel and set it to maybe 0.05. Possibly it's too high, we'll check that in a moment. Right click, add a black mask. Right click, add a fill layer. And here we are going to get the grunge ladder. Change the projection again to triplanar. And it looks a bit too high. So if we click on the layer itself, we can set it to maybe 0.03. So that looks a little bit better. Create a new folder. Drag all of those layers into that folder. Name that armrest. Right click, add a black mask. Go into the polygon fill and then into the mesh fill and select the armrest. And that is the last material we needed to make. The last step that we need to do in Substance Painter is, of course, exporting the textures so we can use them in Blender or in any other software. So if we go to File, Export Textures, we can choose the location for the texture set and just click on Export. Now that that is done, we can go back to Blender and apply the materials over there. The first thing we want to do is delete this high poly mesh. We don't need it anymore, we only used it for the texturing. And now we can also turn on the original table. In the Material Properties tab, we can just press New, rename the material to MAT Table. In the Shading tab, we have our principal BSDF, and we do want to make sure that we have the Node Wrangler add-on activated, so if we go into Edit Preferences, Add-ons, and type in Node, and just check the Node Wrangler. Then we can select our material and press Ctrl-Shift-T. Go to our texture folder and just select all the images we made. So if we go back into the Layout tab and switch into the Material Preview, and that is the poker table complete.